We said we were going to come on an hour early, and we're still late. Welcome to episode 60. We're not quite over the hill. We're preparing for retirement. We've met our counselors. We've met our tax guys. And Michael actually has the insurance policies all ready to go.
Yeah, we just need to find beneficiaries. And then, of course, in 5 episodes, we'll be able to collect Social Security. So we'll be financially set for about a week.
Oh, Michael, Saturday night, an hour earlier.
Well, Steph and Bobby are at my in-laws right now, and they ran Bobby ragged. So as I mentioned, we were discussing the episode before we went live. I just resent them the Disney Plus password so that they could sign in down at Grandma and Poppy's, and hopefully they get a good night's sleep tonight, as I don't think anybody did last night.
Nobody did. Yeah. So you want to go first?
Well, let's see. I fell asleep about 20 after 12 and that's with the melatonin, by the way. And speaking of being old, and at 5 minutes after 5, I feel this on my forehead. Jerk. Anyway, so James, I had mentioned I was going to say something to you earlier that may cause you to mute my mute my microphone, but I'm going to say it now. And we were just in our Super Bowl coverage pre and post. Of course, John was supposed to be on tonight, but it is Mrs. Rice's birthday. So happy birthday, Nikki.
Happy birthday, Nikki.
And they are going to an event tonight that John was like, oh, that's great. You're to go do that. And then realized, oh, wait, I have to go with you. So, yeah. We were talking about the Super Bowl and everything. And I noticed that, I was right that the first commercial was Deadpool. And I said it already. But what I didn't realize until I watched the trailer again is that Deshaun Watson was a writer on the movie. In the trailer, it says everyone deserves a happy ending. Come on.
So I'll be doing this show solo tonight. So it's an extended version of the Sports Note. So you get 2.5 hours of nothing but hockey and wrestling talk and heavy metal and I'm gonna put you in the fucking corner. They're dismantling my office this week.
Oh God.
And we're already talking about like who's gonna get set up in the corner. Mike, you need to actually go off camera, take the microphone with you. You need to go stand in the damn corner.
No one puts baby in the corner. Come on, that was over the plate, man. Come on. And the scary part is the first. Come on, I at least deserve the rim shot for that.
Oh, all right.
So, Jim, we got a lot to get to tonight. Besides the stupidity and the hijinks that I like to bring off the jump. We've had another big week in sports. It's very crazy.
Very much so. It's and you'd figure it was one of the slower weeks in sports, but there was so much that came out of it.
Yeah. So hit the button. Let's do this the right way, sir.
It's the 3 biggest topic.
Wrong one.
It's the 3 biggest topics in the world of sports from the last week. Get ready for the Wise Guys hat trick.
And up first tonight in the hat trick, we have I do like the hockey ones. I have to tell you that. I really do. So the College Football Playoff Committee has ratified what they call the 5+7 system. So we're going to break this down more when we get to our college football preview, of course, and John will be a part of the college football preview when we get there, as he is out of the 3 of us, probably the one closest to it being a referee. So the top 5 conference champions and then 7 at-larges would qualify. And what I've liked that they've done is they've taken off has to be a Power 5 conference champion.
Right.
So we could see like a Cincinnati from a couple years ago, who was what we like to call the bracket buster and going to the first playoff as a non-Power 5 team. They got waxed, but
you may not actually have that this year because one of your Power 5 conferences is no more.
Basically.
Well, then again, if you think about it now, you had your Power 5, you had your Big 10, your SEC, your ACC, your Pac-12, and your Big 12. Pac-12 is really not a thing anymore. So, I mean, that's going to open the door for potential. I mean, that could actually be your 4 buys right there. But you're going to have somebody either from that Mountain West, which is the 12 plus the 2 left over from the Pac-12 while they restructure, or a MAC team, or somebody else, or like a Conference USA or an American crashing the party there and hosting a first round game.
Yeah, and that would be pretty cool if you ask me. I mean, I've been very vocal about what I want to see happen with this. Is I want to see a team from down here have to go north and play in December outside. Because I will say this, I personally feel like the southern teams have the advantage because they play in the better weather all year. They don't have the elements like the Big 10, like the northern Pac-12 teams used to have, like some of the Big 12 teams have in the Midwest. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. I mean, everybody's dream matchup would be an Ohio State hosting in Alabama at the Horseshoe in December, or Georgia, one of those guys. Although I think with the rosters the way they are and the way the SEC is shaking out and the Big 10, I think those two guys are going to end up with buys, but we'll get into prediction down the road. So let's go into the last part of what you typed there, Jim, and that's that potential of going to 14 in 2026. I think 14 would just be a money grab, in my opinion. It would just be a money grab. There are reports that the NFL is not happy with college football right now.
Because considering they basically stole their playoff format.
Well,
I mean, think about this. You could actually have. That's the great thing about them ratifying this 5+7 system, is that you're not going to run into a situation like you have the last 2 years, where you're going to have a Georgia who did not win their conference leapfrog and get in. You're not going to have an Ohio State who didn't even get to their conference championship game get into the top 4. They're going to have to qualify to be able to go on the road to actually play a bowl game. It could be a home game for them essentially, but it's that one extra game. So you're not going to have 2 from the same conferences getting the bye for the first couple of years of this thing,
which is a good thing. In my opinion, you cannot have it. Can't be rigged like the last one was. It can't be an invitational anymore. I think 12 we actually get a playoff system as opposed to an invitational, which is what the 14 playoff was the entire 10 years it happened. Which did that 10 years go by in a blink of an eye?
Yeah, and I think the reason why I like the 12, and you're right, I don't like the idea of going to a 14 is because you every year that they've kind of done this, when the BCS first came out in the late 90s, then you actually had a true national championship game, but then again it was basically deemed by the polls, and that evolved into, then you actually had the New Year's 6 games kind of evolve out of that, and then you went to the playoff 10 years ago, and then you had the top 4 teams in the country. Now this way you've still got the foundation and the legacy that's been built in a very short amount of time of those top 4 teams with the CFP, and you're just adding on to it. So that's why I don't like the idea of going to 14, because then that 3 and that 4 have to play, or if you go to 16, nobody gets a bye. So you keep the fundamental basis of the CFP and you expand on it, kind of like what the NCAA tournament did with the first 4 in, first 4 out, and then, or the possibility of them expanding to 96 in the that's been talked about. So this way you've got your top 8 teams. Those are that's basically it's your top 32, but realistically it's not that much different than your top 25 are already in, and then everyone else has got to qualify to get into the tournament.
Yeah, no, and that's a pretty apt comparison for this system. The one thing I'm looking forward to, though, with it, Jim, is we are finally going to get a team that has to win a couple of games and not, first of all, get a home game in one of these things. I mean, I just, if you look at going back, any team from the South that played in the Sugar Bowl or even the Peach Bowl, you're going to home game.
Exactly.
And for that to happen, like what was it? If Michigan would have beaten Georgia a few years ago, that's the year the national championship was in Indianapolis. So yeah, Michigan would have had a home game in the championship game, but they would have earned their way into the championship game.
Right.
To have that one. The one thing I hope they do is when they incorporate the bowls, you got to make it where it's an actual neutral site. You can't tout yourself as a game that's played at a neutral site when you have Georgia playing in Atlanta. That's not a neutral site. It's not.
I'd like to see them maybe take the March Madness approach where you don't put them in their backyard, but at least they're in the same area. So, like, for example, if UConn runs, UConn's going to get a number one. Make them play in, like, Boston instead of, like, Hartford or something. But you basically put them in a region. You start dividing up the games once you actually advance, and then the bowl system comes in. You start putting them in regions as opposed to essentially home games. Now, granted, they actually have earned the right for that. But again, you throw them in the region. So, like, your West champion would be in your Rose Bowl. In the South, you put them in the Georgia Dome, or you put them in the Superdome. If you go up north, you put them in Indianapolis. So you make it. You see where I'm going with that.
Yeah, well, if they're going to use the New Year's Six as the way they go to the next round, when you go from that 8 teams to that play the one weekend to the 8 teams that play next, and you're using the New Year's Six. So you're the first year, if I'm doing the math right in my head, the 4 games that'll be the national quarterfinals will be the Peach, Fiesta, Rose, and Sugar, which means the Orange and the
Cotton
would be the national semifinals. The national championship game itself, I think, is in Vegas, right? The first one?
I would like to see them maybe do something where the national championship game is played in the same spot every year.
I don't know if you can do that because of the Super Bowl rotation and when this game is going to be played. Because if you pull the Super Bowl rotation, like, for instance, if they say it's going to be in Vegas every year, the year it's in Vegas the year the Super Bowl's in Vegas, you're going to have to move it.
Well, what they should do is they should make sure it's in a spot. Use the same stadiums essentially, but they've got to be retractable. So that you've got Vegas, you got SoFi in LA, you've got the Superdome, you've got the Georgia Dome, you've got Indianapolis, and then you've got Reliant in Houston. So those should probably be your 5 or 6 sites up until Cleveland potentially gets one, and then you throw them in the cold, and maybe open the roof like that much just to screw with people.
The kickers especially. Now, let me ask you this: how about national championship game being in Pasadena every year at dusk?
Because the Rose Bowl's not used for something like that.
No,
you never.
You would
really
just have to flip.
About.
You have to flip one of your national quarterfinals or national semifinals to an Indianapolis or somewhere like that. But if you say the road, how's this sound? The CFP road to the Rose Bowl, and the Rose Bowl being the granddaddy of them all, hosting the championship.
I think you just kind of shot a hole in my argument here, about keeping it in one spot because, travel expenses and everything. Maybe it would be nice for, let's say, Columbus not have to fly to Vegas every year. What if they actually get one in Indianapolis? If just the way that it rolls out, because you also have to worry about scheduling it that with those sites with the NFL. But then again, I mean that's your Super Bowl analogy. But it's like if you got a situation like this year, you had Michigan, Washington. A neutral site would be nice. Like Vegas was a lot closer to Washington. Maybe like Houston could have been a possibility. shifted a little bit more to the west. So they've still basically got to kind of meet in the middle, so to speak. Here, it's because you don't want to actually put, like if Columbus is in there, Indianapolis is going to be a home game because that's a 4-hour drive away. If Washington, if let's say Oregon got there next year, you put them in SoFi, that's what, an 8-hour drive. That's a 2-hour flight.
Something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it logistically with college football, it's going to be rough because it is a nationwide thing. It's not regional like the NFL. That's why I think the Rose Bowl makes sense, because there are only two teams that will really consider that a home game, and I don't see either of those two teams getting there anytime soon.
Well, you figure as much as we've dumped on college football the last really 6 to 8 months with the whole realignment thing really taking effect, and how they say that they're basically now a minor league system to the NFL, this is one thing that I think we both can agree they've modeled kind of after the NFL, and they kind of got it right on paper.
Yeah, on paper they did. Let's see how they actually roll this damn thing out.
Yeah.
Part of the reason they got it right on paper is because it's a CFP doing this, not the NCAA.
I could still see a scenario, and we could talk about this with John, that like, do some of these teams kind of break away and kind of go back to their old conferences, and then you see college football start to secede away, have their own governing body, and then like start building their own conferences, kind of like how with I know you don't follow the sport nearly as well, but college hockey, you've got Ohio State plays in the Big Ten, Boston College doesn't necessarily play in the Big East because there is no Big East hockey conference. They play in Hockey East. So a lot of these schools don't play in their actual conferences. They actually make up a separate conference because there's not enough schools that participate to keep the framework of the traditional college conference system that everybody knows because of the big sports, your football, your baseball, your basketball, swimming, gymnastics, etc.
Mm-hmm. I honestly believe that the CFP is going to become its own thing, where big time college football on the FBS level is going to become its own entity. The NCAA is fumbling the ball left, right, and center. I don't know if you saw, but Johnny Football was on Shay Shay.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Apparently he's the one holding the torch to get Reggie Bush's Heisman back, which, non-cocaine fueled brain will actually have coherent thought. But
did you watch the Untold documentary on him yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. It's, my attention
really
span
only
is
spent
very
about
short.
20 minutes on his Browns career.
That's all he spent with the Browns, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about as much film as he watched too.
And punt.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. And when, John, we came to us, and really how him and I got going was that he had done a mock 12-team playoff. Let's see what he thinks about the 5 and 7 we get him on. Hopefully in the next few weeks we can get him back on here and we can get into that topic a little deeper.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the final segment of the show. The month of March for us, not only are we passing the 60 plateau here, we're loaded with guests next month. I mean,
yeah,
Thursday is the final day of February.
Bobby, say.
I can't even believe it. It just blows my mind that February's over already.
Michael, we had, even though we're still talking about college football, we've got spring games coming up in just a few weeks. We had preseason baseball today.
Oh, it was beautiful. I mean, the Mets got smoked, and I don't give a shit.
And the Guards got smoked too, but yeah, it's just so nice.
I got to send you Gary Cohen and Ron Darling talking about the new uniforms.
Oh, we will talk about that. I think that's coming up in the Blast tonight.
Yes, we will. But since we have to get...
Or not so much the Blast, but we're debuting a brief new segment in the second half of the show tonight.
So, now, before you hit the button for the next thing, I want you to listen to this, okay? This was the other day.
Pivot.
If you could have seen his face, he was eating an English muffin with a gluten-free English muffin with cream cheese. His whole face was white. And he goes, pivot.
Wait, just give him another year. When we're into when we're looking in year 4 of this show, and he's screaming it like Ross, he will be on the soundboard probably in the next year.
Yeah. So, Jim, let's go to number 2. Pre-draft jitters. So there are some big choices coming up for NFL teams in the next few weeks. You have the Chicago Bears deciding what they're going to do with the number 1 pick with Justin Fields. You have all sorts of craziness going on. Number 1 with the draft process, the evaluation of the talent, with people doing mock drafts, which we're going to talk about that off the air because I want to do something different this year than what we normally do. But let's talk about Justin Fields because it has come out today, unless that was a bogus source, and I haven't seen anybody say it wasn't, that it looks like the Chicago Bears are going to trade the number 1 overall pick and keep Justin Fields as their quarterback going into his 4th season in the league, which means they also have to figure out they're going to exercise his 5th-year option. So, Jim, I want to ask the question this way of you on this one. I've been a proponent of keeping Justin Fields in Chicago, as has Alex, our local Bears fan. My question to you is this. How much further are they going to fuck this kid up? Because they have not built around him. They have not drafted any linemen or any kind of weapons. They got him DJ Moore, and if he didn't miss games for injury, he was on pace for 3,500 yards passing and 900 to 1,000 yards rushing. No quarterback's ever done that.
And also keep in mind with that talent, he had them. They weren't in playoff contention late, but they made a little bit of a run to make it interesting. So if you actually didn't, if you were to, like, let's say in a year or two, go back on like Wikipedia or on the NFL's website and look at the standings from previous seasons, you're going to see that the Bears were not as bad at the end of the season as they were in the start of the season.
No, they weren't. And let's talk about this in real talk now. The Chicago Bears have never developed a quarterback. Never. They were the monsters of the Midway. They had defenses that would punch people in the face. They had good running backs, and they had quarterbacks who didn't turn the ball over. They have never developed a quarterback. So why are you going to get rid of a guy and bring in someone else who's a development project? Because let's be honest, Caleb Williams has played 6 games against good defenses in the last 2 years. He's 0-6.
I agree. It's although we've brought it up on this show, we can make the case going both directions. We don't necessarily agree with it. If you stay with Fields, you can actually use that number 1 pick to get, somebody to actually help him out, keep him upright, give him an extra weapon. Or if you get rid of him, you're going to get a ton of picks. You're not going to be moving that far back, and then you're going to fill a lot of holes.
Here's my question to you.
And you're also going to be able to save yourself a bunch of salary cap. And then we'll talk about that in the second part there, because the salary cap exploded with the report from yesterday.
So because they're going to they pick at 1 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take Marvin Harrison at 1 and hope Joe Alt is there at 10?
Are you saying that as a Buckeye homer, or are
I'm
you
saying that as he's the number 1 rated wide receiver in the draft? You have a bereft of weapons on this team. If you made the decision to keep your young quarterback, you need to do 2 things: protect him and give him people to throw the ball to. Why not?
We also kind of have to see what happens at the combine next month.
I don't think his combine's going to take him down from number 1 on the board.
I don't think his combine's going to take him down from being the number 1 receiver, but does somebody have an absolute blow away combine where they might be able, like somebody may be able to supplant Caleb Williams as the number one quarterback, that a lot of scouts are saying should go in this draft. I mean, I've heard a couple of people say, Drake May, Bo Nix will be in the first round. He's not going to, Michael Penix will be a late first round, maybe early second round. But a lot of people are saying, Caleb Williams is regardless, we say what we want about him, but a lot of, most experts and most mock drafts that we've seen, Caleb Williams is about as close to a consensus number one of the quarterbacks coming off the board. So if he doesn't actually have the greatest combine or pro day, does somebody else slip in? Does that possibly leave the option open to where they take a skill position or a lineman to help him out and possibly run the risk of losing out on Caleb Williams?
I think that it's going to come down to, with Chicago, are you going to spend the time to develop a quarterback? If you're not, then take Caleb Williams and trade Justin Fields. Because
and end up saving yourself roughly, between 15 and 18 million the next few years.
Yeah, because you reset the number. And I get that part of it. But if you're willing to build around him and you're willing to take a good offensive lineman with your second first round pick, why not give him the best wide receiver in the draft at number one? I'm not saying do the Marvin Harrison Jr. no matter what sticky note, but I'm saying use your brain.
Or potentially, if you move out of one, or you move Fields. Well, yeah, if you move out of one and you don't take Fields, not only do you actually get three guys that you would expect to be able to come in and certainly either, if not start, certainly be in the immediate rotation, depending on the formation. And then also save yourself that $15-20 million to go out and maybe get somebody like some of the other guys we might talk about in the second half of the show here, because there's a lot of big name receivers that are likely not going to be back with their playoff caliber teams next year.
The only thing I'll say to finish up this part of it is, God forbid he ends up in Pittsburgh.
Although I'm actually hearing Russell Wilson, and that's going to segue into the second part here. We've already seen the story that came out about the Dolphins cutting O.J. Howard and who else was it? I had it right here, and then ESPN just refreshed.
Oh, of course
it was O.J. Howard and Emmanuel Ogbah for salary cap cuts, and then the NFL also announced that the salary cap is raising $30.6 million next season, and the cap will actually be at a record 255.4. But I think they also had to do that because of the revenue, the TV right deal coming up before too long, and also you've got the massive Russell Wilson cap hit. You've got the massive Deshaun Watson cap hit. You have to increase the salary cap a record number because to basically meet the demands of these big name quarterbacks with their massive extensions now kicking in.
Well, let's talk about what New Orleans is dealing with. They're 90 million over the cap. Now it's probably about 30 with the way it's moving as I'm sitting up, because again, my back is still, I went to the chiropractor. Wonderful adjustment. Felt great for a few days. Not so much today. So yeah, you're going to have to do that. And let's talk about the local impact that it's going to have is now that Browns won't have to cut Nick Chubb, because that was a fear, which I'm going to say this, all kidding aside, I think the fan base would have revolted.
I completely agree, because there's now a lot of people that saying even though he's coming off a devastating injury that is probably going to alter the trajectory of the rest of his career, not only is he still more beloved, but he's probably still a more intricate and important piece of this offense than the guy under center that there was rumors even just a few weeks ago on this show we talked about. Could they possibly move on from him after this season?
If they win less games and when Joe Flacco closes the season out next year, then they're going to have to. I don't think it's a choice at that point in time.
Well, ESPN ran a story earlier this week, and it was kind of going into the draft. What would be one bold prediction that each team should make. And it was for the Browns, it was bring in another quarterback to be able to compete with Watson, to be able to kind of light a fighter under his ass, because because if you got to run with Dorian Thompson Robinson as the 2 next year, something happens to Watson, your season is over. The kid just did not have it. And he had all of his weapons, available. Whereas in year 1, when Watson came back, most of his weapons were on the shelf.
No, agreed. They won't do that because that would be smart. And I think we can both agree, as good as Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have been, a lot of the smart moves haven't been made.
Right. Some of the other things that were talked about were the Bills need to trade Stephon Diggs to be able to try and maximize their value for him as he's turning 30. The Rams, now that they actually have a first-round pick back for the first time in about 4 years, even with the Jalen Ramsey thing finally off the books, gives the Browns something to look forward to for next year. The Rams should actually use their first-round pick for the first time in God knows how long.
No, yes. Now, let me ask you this. What about what Mike Tannenbaum said? Do you remember what he had mentioned? That the Giants should send Daniel Jones and a second-round pick to the Browns for Deshaun Watson in a third or a fourth. Because Watson's controllable for 3 years under that guaranteed contract. He's owed $43 million for each of those years. Daniel Jones has 1 more year of control left at 36. And then the Browns can reset the clock by drafting quarterback in the next draft next year when they have it. As insane as Mike Tannenbaum is and how he screwed the Jets left, right, and center by dismantling that team around Mark Sanchez and going into Rex Ryan's year 3, the idea has merit. You have a perplexed look on your face.
I was like a whole bunch of. I got so many notifications across the top of the phone that I didn't know exactly what they were. It's like where it actually put +6 or whatever it is, because there's too many to show up.
I hate that. What do you think about that? Do you think a move like that could be done this year if the Browns don't think, A, he's going to be what he was before the injury, or B, they see the handwriting on the wall, that this is going to blow up in their face and they need to draft capital and they need a quarterback that they may have to start from scratch with?
Being a Clevelander, when he was in there, he game managed. He didn't turn the ball over very much, but he did not look like he had total control over the offense. And now you actually fired a couple of coaches, namely Alex Van Pelt. I like Ken Dorsey. I liked him, when he was at Miami, even though that was like the waning years of my Buckeye fandom. I respected the hell out of him. I liked him as a coach. I liked him when he was a quarterback with the Browns for a couple of years, even though he rode the pine most of the time. He's a very, very smart guy. But now you've kind of brought in a coaching staff that is tailored to him. And this is something where they're almost kind of backed themselves into a corner, because if you had the option of trading him to save essentially easily $30 million and get a couple of early round picks back, unless a 1 is in there, I still don't see where they make a deal like this, because I think if the other option would be to bring in Daniel Jones as your starter, you'd be better off signing PJ Walker off the practice squad.
I don't disagree with you. I don't like Danny Dimes either. But I will say this. The idea has merit because of the cap hits and how long they are for. And that's it. This is not a talent move. This is a salary cap move. Because again, even with the cap going up where it is, you're going to have to restructure some contracts in order to bring in guys who can fill in that defense, which was mostly on 1-year prove-it deals. And like we had said, with the statistical success that the Browns defense had, these guys are going to get paid somewhere else. And they're going to get paid at good money that the Browns just don't have.
I will actually say that They are going to save a pretty penny because if I were the Browns, I do not bring back Anthony Walker. As good of a player as he has not been healthy each of the last 2 years. I think you have to move on.
Okay, agreed. Who you getting?
You could probably develop. I mean, we saw with that Jim Schwartz system, Walker went down, JOK went down for a while, Delpit went down. You got a healthy Denzel Ward back, and you were the best defense in football.
And here's where
I think this is built outside of Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, and to an extent Delpit before he got hurt, and JOK. Outside of those 4 guys, you still have 7 others, and then a bunch of guys that have to get rotated in and out. And I think this is something where guys excelled in that system, whether it was Za'Darius, whether it was Dalvin Tomlinson. It was a lot of these guys that were plugged in because they fit the scheme and the system. So it's something that you can play a little bit of money ball here, and you can build these guys in the aggregate. What do you pay them to do? You pay them to stuff the run and get on base, so to speak.
I agree with you. Now where'd you go?
Drop something.
Now here's where building the defense in the aggregate is going to bite the Browns in the ass. You ready? Their O-line is old and immobile. How do you build a unit to protect that running back and that quarterback in the aggregate? You can't. They've got to make a splash on the O-line. There is no one in the draft that they're going to be able to get to in, was it round 2 or 3?
Yeah, their earliest pick is at 2 is in the second this year.
There's not going to be a difference maker in round 2 on the offensive line. They stepped in some serious shit with DeJuan Jones. They did. No one anticipated him developing that quickly.
Because I think also if you're the Browns, you've got to move on from Jed Wills.
Which now you need a left tackle.
Well, here's the thing. As well as he played, do you maybe actually try to move DeJuan over to that to that left tackle position?
I don't think with a quarterback coming off an arm injury and a running back coming off a knee injury, you can afford to do that. You need to bring in a left tackle who's going to be proficient to start. Remember, he played right tackle and he played guard at Ohio State because he had Paris Johnson anchored at that left tackle. Guy went number 6 overall for a reason and protected very well in his first year in the league.
Well, you also, if you possibly move on from Conklin, you're going to have quite a bit of cash coming back that you can use to go out and get somebody.
You are going to have that cash coming back, but again, the O linemen who are being paid hefty sums are exterior, not interior.
Well, let's talk about, before we run out of time, as we've got about 90 seconds left in this segment, let's talk about that last part. Where does Mike Evans show up? Because him coming back to Tampa is not a done deal as yet.
See, here's where him going back to Tampa is going to make sense. And that's Baker is not going to take the 45, 50 million that people say he's going to be offered to stay in Tampa. I believe Baker will stay in Tampa. A dark horse for Baker would be New England. Because Daniel Jeremiah did his most recent mock draft, and New England took Marvin Harrison at number 3.
Yeah, so here's the question: who's throwing to him?
But that's what I'm saying. Baker's available. Kirk Cousins is available. So there's that. But I think Baker ends up back in Tampa, and Baker is the type of player that I think you and I can agree would take less money to bring his all-pro Hall of Fame wide receiver back with him and run it back and try and win that division again.
Well, we can actually talk about this with your friend when he comes on.
We're going to get him on soon too.
Yeah. Does Tampa possibly draft a quarterback to compete with Baker in one of the first 2 rounds?
I don't believe so. Mostly because, again, 2 quarterbacks in Tampa Bay history have thrown for 4,000 yards and less than 10 interceptions, and it's Tom Brady and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Last bit on Mike Evans. The scary thing is if Kansas City figures out how to pay him.
Yeah.
How do you guard Travis Kelce and him?
At that point, we're talking 4 and 6.
At that point, we're talking possibly 4 in a row.
Yeah, because if he lands there with the fact that they fixed their defense, which was always a question the last
And
few
their
years.
defense is all young.
They fixed the defense, and now they actually have a legit number one because you can't put two guys on both Kelsey and Evans on every single play,
No, you can't, because then you
and
got
also expect to have two guys spying on Pacheco.
you want to have two guys. Your two guys are spying on Pacheco, one on Patrick. So yeah, no, it's that for the NFL is the scary proposition. So Jim, let's get to our final topic in the hat trick for the wise guys tonight.
Trying to figure out who I want to play tonight. Go a little LA Kings to close up.
Nice. And if you wanted to do the real Rangers, you play Hava Nagila. So college basketball. Let's start with that first one on the left. UConn, as we talked last week, put a historical ass whooping on Marquette, and the next night got the piss beat out of them by Creighton. Is there on the women's side, we have the most consistent number ones every year. Tennessee under Pat Summitt was always, when they were number one, they put the hammer down, they beat people.
Yep.
The factory that Gino Auriemma has in stores has been uncharted.
The now number 2 all-time Gino Auriemma.
And even when Tara Vanderveer had her teams at Stanford to that level, when they hit number one, they put the hammer down. And now Dawn Staley is just saying South Carolina is the place to be. It seems like
it is now your proverbial Green Acres.
You say Green Acres, and I don't think of the TV show. I think of the golf course I played in New York all the time. So yeah, look, the men's tournament is always interesting, and it will be this year. Is there a favorite on the men's side, Jim?
I still think it's got to be UConn right now. I mean, they were the first. I want to say, to this point in the season, they were the only unanimous number one at any point. I mean, until the polls come out tomorrow, they still got all 62 first place votes in the AP poll and all 32 in the coaches poll. But Houston is right on their ass right now. UConn is now 24-3, and Houston is 23-3. You got Purdue with Zach Edey, even with that stunning loss earlier in the season, 23-3. They're ranked third. Arizona's at 4, Tennessee at 5, Iowa at 6, Marquette at 7, probably going to dip a little bit. Duke got beat today at 8. Excuse me. And then you've got Kansas and North Carolina rounding out the top 10, especially after this time last week. North Carolina beating Duke in the Tobacco Road showdown. It's just so all over the place, because you got to figure Creighton at 19-7 is going to get some love to possibly be right outside the top 10. I think there's too big of a gap for them to get in it at 15 right now, because they're over 400 votes behind North Carolina in last week's poll. But you go out and you whoop UConn by 16. People are going to start taking notes, especially when you were in the Elite Eight last year.
Yeah, and Creighton brought back most of their team from the Elite Eight last year, if I remember correctly, too.
Yeah, Ryan Kalkbrenner had a huge game the other night.
Yeah, Creighton's going to be tough coming down the stretch. UConn will probably retain the number one seed or the number one spot in the polls this week, because no one else is really distanced themselves from anybody else. Yeah, Houston's going to give them a run in this poll, but I think that the one that is going to shock people is I think Purdue's going to fall out of the top 5.
Yeah, and that'll actually be in the that's it coming up in that second part. But it's I thought Duke was going to be able to handle Wake Forest today, and I'm saying that as a Dookie. I had it kind of on in the background for a little while. That game just kind of got away from them late. But this is actually the times where, time of season where, you start to see a little bit of the separation, with, the cream is definitely starting to rise and separate here.
No, I agree with you, and I'm pulling up the scoreboard. I pulled up NCAA baseball, which, by the way, has been on ESPN Plus the last few nights, and I've been watching.
UConn already up 10 at the half on Villanova.
Tennessee is up 10 on Texas A&M. Washington State is down 7 to Arizona State at the half.
Yep.
Colorado State's up 2 at the half to UNLV. Houston beat Baylor, but it took them to overtime. Your Gators won, beat Vandy. Arizona
beat Washington. Yep.
Iowa State. Duke lost to Wake Forest. Kansas State beat BYU, so 25 is going to fall out of the thing.
And then you've got San Diego and St. Mary's coming up tonight after we go off the air. How weird is that to say? And then San Diego State and Fresno State as we go off the air tonight. And then I want to say there's a couple of games on tomorrow. You've got Creighton and St. John's tomorrow. You've got Purdue, Michigan, and then you got Xavier on the road in Marquette. I mean,
and then did you see?
Really should not be that close, but it's definitely. But these are going to be the kind of games for Marquette. It's going to be a rebound game. For Purdue, it's going to be a rebound game. For Creighton, it's going to be another feather in their cap because Creighton's the only one of these games tomorrow that's playing a team over 500. Xavier's right at 500 and needs a lot of work to be able to try and get themselves in because
they've got to win their tournament.
Yeah, because I don't think right now that they get more than 4 out of that conference. And this is actually now we've got one bid schools. Their tournament start as early as next week.
So that means in 2 weeks, we got to have the whiteboard out. Or at the very least, the Google Doc, so we can show people we're doing this for real.
I was going to say, because I don't think that whole wall is big enough for a whiteboard.
And I don't want to look like Charlie Day from friggin' Always Sunny with the lines pointing at shit and everything.
Yeah, but at that point, with the two of us, it would probably resemble the basketball playoffs a little bit more.
Especially with us two. Did you see Kentucky put up 120 points today against Alabama?
I did not. All I know is that it's about time that they won a game because they lost their last 2. One of them, which my Gators.
Is it 30 years or closer to 35 that the Calipari John Chaney argument?
Yeah.
I'll kick your ass.
2 guys I never could stand.
Me neither, but I was with Chaney on that one.
I hated John Chaney. I actually hated John Chaney more than John Thompson back then. And it wasn't for, the types of programs that they ran. It's just I never really had that much respect for either one of them.
I like Calipari when he was at UMass.
Yeah.
But I think
I was a fan of his. And then when he actually started jumping all over the place, when he was at it wasn't Kansas, was it?
No, it was the Knicks.
Okay, yeah. I really
UMass to the Knicks.
And I hate Kentucky more than any team in college basketball.
I don't have a hate team in college basketball. I mean, I do, but that's because I hate them all year round. I more don't like some of the coaches. Don't like Calipari. I think Rick Pitino has turned into a crotchety old fuck.
Yeah, and I'm actually and what's funny is that him at St. John's tomorrow, they're gonna get it run up on them.
Good
by Creighton.
Good.
Although that game's actually being held in the Garden.
Yeah, I think that's going to be. It's different when St. John's plays in the Garden. It really is. And I remember watching Louis Carnesecca coach in the Garden.
But
let's talk about that the middle one now. And Ohio State finally fired Chris Holtmann about a year or 2 late, in my opinion. Whereas with Ryan Day, he has had success in the postseason. He's won a couple of Big Ten championships. He's just had a bad couple of years against Michigan the last 3 years. Chris Holtmann has not put a good product on the floor for several years.
Outside of really was it the first year or the second year that they made that run to the Final Four?
It was his 3rd year.
and
So
really
early
did
on,
nothing since. Remember in the bubble they lost in the first round as a 2 seed.
yeah. And really the first year he had Thad Matta's team. And
I dare say Ohio State has not really been the same since Thad Matta was the coach.
they haven't been. I don't know if it's recruiting. I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know what it is, but they have not been. They have not been bringing in the same type of players.
They were at one point, but then Michigan caught up under Juwan Howard, called lightning in a bottle, and now everyone is starting to move to Purdue, and I think Purdue's going to be just fine even after Zach Edey leaves it after the season.
Yeah, the work that he's putting in right now he's probably going to be the back-to-back player of the year in college basketball. That's a big move there. Heisman Trophy winners, it's not a huge thing. You don't go to schools to play where a place where a guy was a Heisman Trophy winner. But because if you don't go after the first year, you have to stay through year 3, you can be developed in college basketball. That you'll see guys going to schools to do that. Purdue is not a one and done school. Neither is Ohio State for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look, I'm looking at the AP Top 25 right now, and you only have 2 teams from the Big Ten in the entire top 25.
Oh God.
It just shows you the parity of college basketball right now. You've got Purdue at 3, you got Illinois at 12, and the next closest one at that point is Wisconsin at 28, Michigan State's at 29, and then nobody else in the conference gets a vote, because I'm one of these people that will still say a team is ranked based off of how many votes they get, even if they're not in the top 25.
No, I don't blame you, because it's not 25 teams that get into the dance.
Exactly.
So Wisconsin will probably get in with a good showing in the Big Ten tournament. Same thing with Michigan State. I will say this. I am shocked that the Big Ten, which, what was it, 2 years ago, had 7 teams?
Yeah.
I'm shocked at that.
They're going to be lucky to send 5 at this point.
They're going to be lucky to send 3.
They'll definitely get 3. They'll get it. They'll get 4. I don't think they're going to send 7 or 8 like they do some years. I think they cap at 5 this year.
I think they're going to have a hard time getting 4. Because let's say Michigan State goes out in their first game in the Big Ten tournament, they've got no resume to do it. They've got to get to the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament, both Wisconsin and Michigan State, in order to get in and be anything decent.
I think you're right. I think they would have to win at least one game in the Big Ten, because I think at that point you might have to start thinking about first 4 for them.
Exactly. And the first 4 that you and I agree is not the tournament.
Right. It's something to watch on a Tuesday night, because NCIS, I'm sorry, like all the CBS shows get postponed, even though those games are on TNT.
No, I agree. By the way, I saw the ending scene of this past week's episode. Absolutely perfect.
McWisey.
McHurry. So let's talk about the Lady Hawkeyes getting their behinds handed to them the other night.
Indiana is for real. We talked about it last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, when she was on the verge of the record. Do not sleep on the Lady Hoosiers. We talk about, Iowa's going, Caitlin was going to take them and run and hide, and then they got supplanted by Ohio State, and then Ohio State beats, Iowa, and for Indiana to go out there in those god awful uniforms, nonetheless, and wax Iowa like that, Indiana's got a shot to play themselves into maybe a 2 or a 3 line.
Yeah,
at the expense of Iowa, nonetheless.
Yeah, and at the top 15 in the AP Top 25 for women's college basketball, South Carolina is still the number 1, the only undefeated team in the country,
and unanimous.
Yep, Lady Buckeyes are number 2 at 23-3. Stanford, Tara Vanderveer's squad, 23-4 at number 3. Iowa is 23-4 at number 4. Texas, NC State, USC with that freshman who put up the 50 burger Virginia Tech, Oregon State, Kansas State round out the top 10. Get down to 14, and you have Indiana. Also in there at 13 is last year's national champion, LSU. UConn and Gino Auriemma and Paige Bruckers, who announced she will be coming back for her 5th year of eligibility, sit there at number 15. Very quietly, we have a Ivy League school in the top 25.
Princeton at 25. And also, even though they had a rough week and they nearly fell out, you never, ever, ever, as the tournament gets closer, sleep on the Lady Bears down there in Baylor.
Same thing with Notre Dame. You know what? The men's tournament has more intrigue. It has more upsets, more Cinderellas. This one's going to be a barn burner.
Because you don't get nearly as many upsets. I think a lot of that is because of the first 2 rounds being played on campus.
Yes.
In the women's tournament. It's really kind of designed to cut down on the parity. I understand it eliminates a lot of the travel costs. Or dramatically reduces it. But what would it say if one of these teams that was supposed to be here in Cleveland the first week of April gets bounced on their home floor and has to actually watch 4 or 5 other games on that floor that they're not taking part in?
That's crazed. That's absolutely crazed. I tell you what, though, I will say this. If Caitlin Clark gets on a roll, don't count them out.
Well, we're going to talk about it in our poll question on the second half of the show, but let's kind of offshoot this while the buzzer's about to go off here, and we'll end on this. There was a lot of talk that can you actually consider Caitlin Clark amongst the all-time greats, even after she breaks, the all-time scoring record, as she catches Pete Maravich's record here, probably in the next week at this particular point. And some of the pundits, your Stephen A's and a couple other people actually said, no, because until she wins a national championship. But do you really think she's going to care? Because she's got 2 National Players of the Year back-to-back. She's got the all-time men's and women's scoring record. She's played in the Final Four, possibly looking for a second. And, she's going to be the number 1 pick and competing for WNBA championships in as little as the next 2 years with Aaliyah Boston, who was last year's number 1 pick.
Hey, first of all, I am sick and tired of these people who say they're journalists putting championships as a qualifier for being the greatest of all time. Last time I checked, again, what's the girl's name from LSU?
I can't think of it, but I know who you're talking about.
It doesn't say Diana Taurasi, national champion. Doesn't say Rebecca Lobo. Doesn't say Shamiqua Holtzclaw. Doesn't, and I'm pulling out some names here.
And doesn't say Brittany Griner. Doesn't say Paige Buchers. Yeah.
Lisa Leslie. It doesn't say
Cheryl Miller. Yeah.
It says those teams. When you have a transformative and transcendent player like Iowa has in Caitlin Clark, you have really got to, as someone goes flying down here like they got a hot rod. Idiots. So loud that the cats actually sat up and looked around, Jim. I hate that it's like that. Because guess what? If you score 45 points in a championship game and the rest of your team shoots 12 for 84, that's not on you.
Because if you think about it, as I'm trying to pull the name up here real quick, remember this time last year, you actually saw Antoine Davis at Detroit Mercy fall just 3 points shy of breaking Maravich's record last year. And there were talks that they were going to be put into a CBI or even a 4th tier tournament for him to be able to get the record, with Detroit Mercy having basically a 500 record. They might even been like 2 games below 500, which is Antoine, the greatest college basketball player of all time? Absolutely not. That's actually where you don't just have records and championships mean anything. If Paige Buchers doesn't actually have the 2 knee injuries, Could she be better than Caitlin Clark? Who's to know? Aaliyah Boston, if she doesn't declare a year early, is she actually, considered the National Player of the Year even more than Caitlin Clark, who's approaching that record? We thought that you're right. We thought it was originally Cheryl Miller, and it was. And then Lisa Leslie came along and changed everything. And then Shamika Holdsclaw, and then the Yukon dynasty, where take your pick between, Sue Bird and Lobo and Taurasi about the greatest ever. But then remember, with those Yukon teams, it wasn't who's the greatest women's college basketball player. This is the greatest women's team ever.
What did Taurasi's team go the one year? Were they 40-0? Didn't they lose? Didn't they take like 2 years to lose a game?
Something like that. I want to say they won 2 straight championships undefeated.
Then how is Taurasi not the greatest player of all time? If she's the main cog on the greatest team ever, how is she not the greatest player ever? I love Diana Taurasi, and by the way, she's a shit talker on the level of Larry Bird.
Caitlin Clark might have her beat, though.
Caitlin Clark, listen, is channeling Larry Bird.
That's the men. I want the women. Okay, so I'm looking at the women's Naismith winners. Cheryl Miller won 3 straight between 84 and 86 at USC. Sue Wicks, a name from the past. Jennifer Azey. Dawn Staley won back-to-back at Virginia in 91-92. Cheryl Swoops in 93 at Texas Tech. Lisa Leslie only won 1. Lobo in 95.
That was the first title.
Kate Starbird at Stanford in 97. Shamika Holdsclaw back-to-back 98-99. Tamika Catchings, Sue Bird in 02. Taurasi won back-to-back 03-04. So you had 3 straight Lady Huskies win that award. And then Simone Augustus back-to-back at LSU in 05-06. Candace Parker in 08 at Tennessee. Maya Moore in 09, her teammate Tina Charles in 2010 at UConn, and then Maya Moore won her second in 3 years. So it's the second time UConn went 3 straight. Then Brittany Griner wins 2 in a row from 12 to 13. Brianna Stewart wins 3 in a row, the first since Cheryl Miller to do it at UConn. Kelsey Plum, whose record Clark just broke at Washington in 17, based off of that record. Asia Wilson in 18. Megan Gustafson at Iowa in 19, Sabrina Ionescu at Oregon in 20, Paige Buchers in 21. She probably would have repeated except for the injury, and that allowed Aaliyah Boston to step in, and now Clark in 23, and more than likely to be in 24 as well. Look at the names on that list.
It's insanity. How many rings between national championships, Olympic championships, FIBA World Championships, and let's talk about WNBA championships, especially with Diana Taurasi.
Yep.
And now Kelsey Plum has won 2 in a row in Las Vegas.
Right. Because when you look over all of that, the last WNBA player to win the Naismith Award, who's in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, was Tamika Catchings in 2000.
Yeah. They're all going to end up there. Did you say Becky Hammond won 1?
What's that?
Did Becky Hammond win 1?
Not a Naismith Player of the Year award.
She won titles though.
Yeah. And and that's actually where she's a shoo-in, because not only did she win, I want to say 3 as a player, she also won.
She's the coach of the Aces.
Yeah, she won back-to-back as a coach.
Yeah, she's the coach of the Vegas Aces. So
she's already got a Hall of Fame pedigree right now. And she's within the first 5 years of her professional head coaching career.
I'm going to give you a bold prediction, and then we'll go to halftime. Pop's going to hand her the Spurs.
That was originally the thought, but I don't know if with all the talent she's got right now with the Aces that she kind of want. I mean, let's be honest. She's good enough as a coach. She could probably still step on the floor.
Yeah.
If she wanted to.
Probably. So let's hit halftime. And Jim, it's 9:15. Normally we're just getting underway.
Yeah, it's we actually would still be off the air, by 10:30, we hope, especially with the two new segments we're starting tonight that we're not going to spend very long on at all. They're going to be some throw-ins, but we'll have some fun with them.
And of course, the translator, which is everybody's favorite segment, because again, it's the last one.
We will see you guys in approximately 5 to 8 minutes.
Depends on how fast we can refill the drinks.
Bartender Joe Boo needs a refill.
Got you. Oh, here we go. He's boozing, folks.
I don't think so.
We even buy Canadian beer.
The Heineken was better. This one, a lot of the non-alcoholics I've tasted lately, they've found a very good way to do this. This one, I can tell the difference. I might go back to the Heineken. This is good, but the Heineken was a little bit smoother. It was a little bit more crisp. That's definitely not O'Doul's level of bad, though.
O'Doul's is almost as bad as 3-2 beer.
Which is almost bad as Zima. I'll always remember David Letterman when he was back on CBS. Now for the Zima taste test. Tastes like zit.
Oh, my God. All right, we'll see you in a few.
And welcome back. Are you muted?
Yeah, I was.
For once, it wasn't me.
We need We're Not Worthy on the soundboard.
Because every time I do that, I'm actually like, it's going to spiral because then I'm going to want to stick my hand out and have him kiss the ring like Alice Cooper did. And then I'm going to remember that Nita Strauss is his guitar player. And then I'm going to get all warm and fuzzy because I love Nita Strauss. And the girl can flat out shred.
I meant more for like when we have Willie on.
Okay. That could be arranged.
So, Jim, clean first half, man.
Pretty close.
And the only reason we did that is because we started talking about non-alcoholic beer, which is about par for the course for us.
Very much so.
So let's get to the blast, my friend. What we got on tap for tonight?
We are loaded. We've got our NHL whip around. Now, some of these are actually dating back to last week's show that we actually had to pull, but they're still relevant because we're still looking into the fallout. That second one has kind of got a life of its own because there's a second part that's really not related to the story, but has to be brought up. And Mike and I alluded to it off the air. But we'll start with the NHL tonight in a very busy week. We saw Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs hit 52 goals in 53 games.
That's insanity. That's Gretzky-like.
And yet, the funny thing is, Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are going to be discussed in one of our new segments coming up here in a few minutes, is going to hit 100 points probably by the next time we're on the air. He's at 96 points with over 35 games left.
Wow. Wow.
Nikita Kucherov is on pace to hit nearly 150 points this year.
That's insanity. That's a
I
big
saw a
year,
graphic earlier today that they had the top 8 point scorers in all 4 divisions. The Sabres didn't even have anyone in there. The Leafs had 3 in their division, and Kucherov was 20 points clear of any of them.
Wow. Hey, did you see the NHL referees are the most entertaining?
I know where you're going with this, because it was 2 of my favorite teams, including these guys right here. It's
I already said that. That was a great moment. You're not gonna like it.
It's the right call. On the ice stands, no goal. I have a feeling we're gonna have to play it.
Yeah, because it was amazing. And it wasn't Wes, which is the best part. Off topic, if you like cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
Yeah. Kind of like Greg Gig. So yeah, that I got to tell you, once you play the clip, I want to talk about the fallout from the fight.
Stick above his head. They're not going to like it, but the call on the ice was correct. No goal. No, that's some good.
He sounds like Shorzy.
Now, keep in mind, it was already 4-0 Blues at that point.
He sounds like Shorzy.
That's, for a second, I had to double check and make sure it wasn't Wes McCauley because that was right up Wes's alley.
I thought it was Wes too. I looked it up after I saw it.
Yeah, with the flair for the dramatic. It's the call on the ice stands. We got to go.
Yeah, no, Wes is the best. I think Wes took over my favorite official after the retirement of Ed Hockley, who, has the greatest call in the history of the Pro Bowl. Yes, there are penalties in the Pro Bowl.
That
But
was eerily reminiscent of after he tackled the quarterback, he's giving him the business.
there's been a couple of those. There's one in the NFL because they called it on Mark Gastineau, who gave everybody the business. But there's one in college too.
Yeah, I saw that one. And now what's better? Anything coming out of Wes's mouth or false start everybody but the center?
Beast mode?
No, you gotta pick one
Oh,
here.
come on.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Can we talk about him later on, though, what he did?
Oh, yeah, we'll talk about him. But
if it's Wes's body of work against that one call, it's Wes. If you pull a singular call from Wes and put that up against that one, that'd be a tough one.
because again, it was two of my three or four favorite NHL teams. I've been a Blues fan since I was about 6. The Islanders won their first Stanley Cup on my 2nd birthday, so it shows you how long I go back. It's fashion sense, and it's been brought up on this show. Statistically voted one of the worst jerseys in the NHL, and I still have this thing 25, almost 30 years later.
You used to wear that to school.
Religiously. I own 2 Blues jerseys, and I'm actually trying to track down a third. I've owned basically every incarnation of a Blues jersey since the mid-90s at some point. Same thing with the Islanders at that point, although I refuse to wear some of the god-awful alternates they've come out as, the Stadium Series jerseys from even though that was the Stadium Series jersey from a few years ago, they turned into the alternate. The one that they wore last week, I will not buy.
The one they wore last week, we should wipe our ass with, like the terrible towels.
Yeah.
I own 3 Mets jerseys. Used to be 4, but I gave one to my father. I had a Pedro Martinez one because I had never seen my last name on a Mets jersey. And listen, man, other than on my video game, I have the home alternate black, I have the home alternate blue, and I have the home pinstripe. I have my Denzel Ward Browns jersey, I have my Larry Nance alternate jersey, and I have my Nick Mangold. And then the 2 I don't wear are, here's how long I've had this one. Remember when Puma had the NFL? Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn Johnson on the Jets. And then I have my second favorite of all time is the Road Reebok all white Chad Pennington. But going back, what was the suspensions after the hit from the slap shot? Because Dangle was pissed.
The Leafs player got 5 games.
That's it?
With no, well, it would have been more, but he had no prior disciplinary history.
Okay.
So this was going to be a segment. This was going to be something that we were going to talk about last week. There's certain unwritten rules in all sports, and one of them in the NHL is you don't clap a slapper. I would say if you're shooting from inside the red line on an empty net.
Yeah.
Baseball, it's like you don't steal bases when you're up by 2 or more after the 7th inning.
No, it's 4 or more.
Yeah, you don't bat flip somebody.
Well, even the bat flip thing is becoming more commonplace now, because if you look at what Francisco Alvarez from the Mets, I'll just use him as an example. He hit a big home run against Tampa and went apeshit crazy. Same thing he did a big one against Arizona, hit a big one against the Gardos, and went crazed. So the bat flip thing is becoming less because the younger players are doing it more. You don't pimp a home run off of somebody who's got a ticket to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, like
Scherzer will put one in your ear.
Right. The 5 minutes I put the Gardos on today, they gave up an absolute tape measure shot. Like the second the guy hit it, he flipped his bat and then just watched it. It's like, and then the guy right after him hit a slicer down the line. Now it's preseason, But that's definitely something that, somebody's going to get dotted for it if it wasn't the first preseason game of the year.
It depends on who it is, too. If you're some no-name POS rookie coming up and you hit one, and it's not your first one. First one, I think you get a little bit of leeway on because it's your first one.
Mm-hmm.
But if you pimp a home run off a veteran, someone's taking one. And
it's the taunting thing. There's a difference between celebration and showing a guy up. And showing a guy up is what I have the problem with. Like in basketball, you dunk over someone, you don't stand over them, unless you land on them.
Yeah, and not even that. If you dunk over someone, don't scream like you did something.
Although it's a hell of a play, you can scream, but if you're screaming at the fans, that's fine. But you don't stand over a guy when you're doing it.
Well, same thing in college football and the NFL. I mean, you can't hit somebody and stand over them. I mean, the iconic picture of Zach Boren from years ago from Ohio State taking out Devin Gardner and then doing that over top of him.
Yeah.
Now would get a taunting penalty. Even though all he did was celebrate a sack and he literally did that and walked away. There was no standing over him. I want to say it was the Sugar Bowl in 2015 that you saw that happen. I can't. I know it was on Alabama. I just don't remember the player that it happened to. They need to stop worrying about the taunting penalties and start worrying more about the actual ones that guys get hurt on.
Right, but again, with the Toronto one, I understand that the Ottawa's a basement team and Toronto's fighting for playoff positioning at that point. I don't like the clapping of the slapper, but still, you don't skate over and cross check a guy in the head. You don't put a two-hander into his head.
No, you absolutely do not.
If you face wash him, fine. If you actually wanted to rough him up and drop the gloves, yeah, but you don't two-hand him in the head.
No, if he would have gone over there and just hit him in the chest, hit ribs with it, and they would have dropped the gloves, I had no problem with it. That's what you do.
It was like there was a part of me watching it back on replay. It's like, oh my God, is this going to turn into the Dale Hunter thing from the 80s?
Oh. Remind everyone, for those who don't know.
Dale, I can't remember. I want to say it was the New York Islanders scored one late, and then Dale Hunter went over and just absolutely obliterated a guy celebrating up against the boards, and it set off one of the biggest melees in NHL history because Dale Hunter is I want to say, one of only a couple, it's a very small handful. It might be like one of 3 or one of 5. It's certainly less than 5 of guys in the Hockey Hall of Fame with more than 500 goals and 3,000 penalty minutes.
Why did Bob Uecker just pop in my head? Haywood's a convicted felon, isn't he, Monty?
Yeah, but you also could probably think Happy Gilmore of taking off her skate and trying to stab somebody.
You're here. You see Robin Williams do his hockey thing?
Yeah. The best Robin Williams one, hands down, though, is still golf.
Oh, God, yes. And they're from the same stand-up.
Yeah. But the last one on there, which is actually the first one, longtime NHL veteran, 37-year-old TJ Oshie. Could we have maybe seen his final game earlier this week? As a matter of fact, I want to say it was Thursday in a non-contact incident in the Capitals' win over the Tampa Bay Lightning, crumpled to the board and had to actually be helped down the tunnel. And there is high concern that not only is he done for the year, but at his age, could this also be the end of TJ Oshie's career?
With 37, we had said, right? Okay, so I mean, at 37, he's played how many years in the league? 15, 16 years?
Something like that. Was drafted, was a 3-time All-Star with the Blues. He got his Stanley Cup with the Capitals in 2018 after leaving the Blues, but everyone is going to remember him for the legendary shootout against the Russians at the Sochi Olympics.
Yeah, I knew that name for a reason, and I actually watched the entire Sochi Olympics hockey games because NBC Sports was doing something on the apps where you could watch at least one quarter, and then if you signed in, you could watch the rest of the game. And I just used somebody signed in and watch the whole game. That Russia United States game and the Canada United States game were phenomenal games.
Which I also think was the last time that the NHL, up until in 2 years, was at the Olympics, because who was the Russian goaltender? Sergei Bobrovsky.
That's right.
Of the first place Florida Panthers.
If I may, speaking of the Russians, that was 44 years ago this week, Jim.
Do you believe in miracles?
I've stood on that medal stand. When we were kids, my parents took us to Lake Placid. I've stood on the medal stand. Number one sports moment of the 20th century for a reason.
Still the greatest upset in the history of sports.
Yes.
I don't think you could, because of what it meant. And remember, they still had to go out and play another game.
They had to beat
Finland.
Was it Finland or Sweden?
No, because Sweden, I want to say, played the Russians in the consolation game.
In the bronze medal game.
I'm pretty sure it was Finland.
I think it was Finland too.
Because I know they beat the hell out of the Czechs in the opener. They drew against Sweden in their first one, a 7-3 upset over the Czechs. It was a round robin. Yeah, it was Finland.
Okay.
Because they weren't doing a tournament then, so it was a round robin. So they had to beat Finland to have enough points to secure the gold after group play.
That's right. So listen, if TJ Oshie has to hang him up because of injury, that's terrible. Just going back, sorry that you mentioned Olympics, and of course, listen, we were both alive for that. If he's got to hang him up, you've got the Olympic moment, you've got your Stanley Cup with Ovechkin and those boys in 2018. At 37, does he make the comeback, you think? I mean, is he the Messier type who he's just going to play until he's 80?
I mean, at that particular point, he's got nothing else to prove, because the Capitals need to start looking younger. I mean, Ovechkin, I want to say, is 58 away, but Ovechkin is also past 40. So at that point, he's just kind of hanging on, to be able to get the record, although he's starting to catch fire a little bit. He's certainly not going to get it this year. He's got to actually haul ass just to be able to maybe get to 30, 35 goals and have a legitimate look at it next year. But I'm thinking possibly 2 more years at this particular pace. But I'm wondering at that point if Washington is getting older and slower to the point where does he even catch him?
I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, but that's another subject. But I mean, at this point, if I were Oshie and you're out for the season, you got to take a long, hard look at everything. You're not going to go somewhere else and play. You've done everything that you wanted to. You've got your name on the greatest trophy in sports. It just was not with the team that drafted you. Although he's actually, now that I think about it, I think he's played longer in Washington than he played in the 3-1-4 with my boys. He was really the focal point of that franchise up until Vladimir Tarasenko got there and changed the whole complexion of the team. But I would have no problem if Oshie walked away. I really wouldn't. I would hope he would.
I hope he would too, because you don't want to try and come back and then be a shell of yourself and not be able to be the productive player you've been your entire career because you felt like you had to prove something.
I also know that Oshie is so loyal and he's he's one of the most liked and respected guys around the league, that when about, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks ago, when the Blues inducted Keith Tkachuk into their team Hall of Fame with a dinner and a ceremony, on an off night, the Capitals allowed Oshie to take a leave, in between a break in their schedule to attend the event. Because typically you
Wow.
won't see a whole lot of, guys doing functions for other franchises like that, unless it's like a conglomerate, like a charity event.
Yeah, and that makes sense because you don't want your guy going somewhere on a night off to be with a different team.
Right.
The thing that gets me about that is the Capitals understanding that his career before them, he's given them a great deal, but it's who he was drafted to. It's, he played with the guy. So that was a classy move by the Capitals. I got to give them credit where credit's due on that.
And I don't know if you saw the picture out there, and we'll actually move on to the second thing here. There was a photo, even though we both hate this team because of where they are, there was a photo that went out with somebody had their jersey retired last week.
Oh, the Yager picture? Who was in that picture? It was him, it was
Mario Ovechkin. No, I'm sorry. It was Yager, Mario, Gino, and Crosby. And Gino is an Evgeny Malkin.
Yeah.
And each one of those guys has you're talking, I want to say it was 5 Hart trophies, like 10 Stanley Cups, because Mario and Yager, between all of them, because Mario and Yager won back-to-back in 91, 92, and then I want to say Gino and Crosby had 3 in their run for a while.
Yep. Didn't Yager win one somewhere else too?
I don't think so. I know he played for every other team under the sun, but I think his only titles were with the Pens.
Okay. That's a great picture. And I hate them too. But yeah, that's a great picture. So let's move on to the second one. And let's talk about Captain Underpants a little bit. Somebody should fucking sign him. It's been proven that what that person said was crap. He has been cleared of any wrongdoing. And not for nothing, Urias got a second chance and blew it. Ozuna got a second chance. Jose Reyes got a second chance. Why not Trevor Bauer?
And he's still only 32, and with his YouTube channel and some of the other things that he does with momentum, and then showing up on Eric Sims' page, he's still definitely got himself in game shape, still throwing, low to mid, still low 90s.
I think if he had if he was really trying to kick it up, he could still, because he threw 96 in one of them.
Yeah.
But his array of pitches is just insanity. Listen, the Mets lost Kodai Senga for the first couple weeks of the season. If I'm David Stearns, I'm on the phone. And I'm at least giving him a tryout.
But you also got to be careful that you're not interfering with cage ball, which is now into week 3.
Yes, that's true. Cage ball is very, very important, especially when Eric looks stupid half the time.
This year, it's meaning a little bit more because this is year 3 of cage ball. This year, there are 6 teams, and it's round robin format. Winning team gets $10,000. The captain of the loser has to walk around in a lion's suit for a whole day.
I will be watching this.
And one of the rules that actually came out is that by the end of the 3rd week, you have to make a trade with another team in the league. And there were teams conspiring against Sim not to trade, so he would actually automatically fall into last. But now Sim he's entered into an alliance with Trev about possibly what would they rather do? Would they rather humiliate Eric, or would they rather see Tosh get pissed off having to be in the lion suit with how short his fuse is? Because let's be honest,
I want to see
Tosh a lot of shit. Bauer talks a lot of shit. There is nothing funnier than pissed off Tosh.
No, there's not. Maybe when you get on a rant. Maybe. But Todd being pissed off is definitely top 5.
Or when they pick on Kev for live small, bunt the ball.
I fucking can't. Yeah, but going back to Bauer, I think you've got to sign him. You've got to sign him if you're a major league team that needs pitching, like every major league team needs pitching. You need to sign this guy. And the fact that people are still waiting to do it is what drives me crazy. What is it really costing you by signing him? The Dodgers still have to pay him the $40 million.
Right.
So you sign him, you pay the league minimum to a guy who's better. It's basically a free ace. His last full season was the COVID season. We want Cy Young.
Yeah, and then he also set, like, he had phenomenal MVP caliber seasons over in Japan the last 2 years.
He did. He's ready to go. If I'm David Stearns, I'm on the phone. But David Stearns and I are going to argue. So if anybody checks out the Big Rican episode that went up today.
It'd be very, very interesting to actually see what happens with him.
He's got to go. He may have to go small market. But he would he'd look good back in Cleveland in that rotation.
He would.
He just can't play with his fucking drone.
I just don't want to see him with the way that he's turned everything around and also kept himself at the top of his game. I just don't want to actually see him sign with somebody like a Kansas City or, or like a Boston, a team that's not going to contend.
Then a contender's got to reach out to him. Unfortunately,
because you're not expecting him to be a 1 or a 2. You're definitely looking for a 3 or a 4 out of him at this point in his career.
And that's a damn good 3 or 4 you would get at a Trevor Bauer. So, I mean, I believe him to be a solid 2 right now. Honestly, if you look around baseball, especially with the rash of injuries in the older pitchers, Verlander's down, Scherzer's down, DeGrom is down. The older pitchers.
Blake Snell is down.
Blake Snell is, I don't know what he's doing. You barely pitch average 6 innings a night, dude. Don't ask for $35 million a year. Shut up. As much as I can't stomach Garrett Cole, he pitches 7 innings a night.
Garrett Cole and Blake Snell are 2 damn good pitchers, but I'd love to actually see what Bauer does, especially coming off of just how different the Japanese game is. And how fundamentally sound their game is, having spent 2 years over there and bringing that knowledge back to adding on to the major league knowledge he already has.
Yeah, and remember this too. There's not as many bullets fired because they only pitch once a week in Japan. That's where the Japanese pitchers are getting hurt in the States because you're pitching every 5th day.
Right.
So I think someone should sign him. I just do. That's my final say on it, is that someone should sign him. You'd be getting a damn good pitcher and a bit of a lunatic, but the name of the game is winning, and this dude wins.
Yeah.
Wherever he goes. So, Jim, the final topic in the blast is the NBA All-Star Game, which we talked about last weekend. Mac McClung, of course, defended his title. Damian Lillard defended his title. And Sabrina Ionescu shot from the NBA line and only lost by 3 to Steph Curry.
And then they wanted, to rein things in a little bit and then gave up almost 400 points in the All-Star Game itself.
Yeah, let's talk about this. The only All-Star Game worth watching is baseball because it's an actual fucking game.
Yep.
The Pro Bowl has turned into summer camp, basically. Or the quarterback challenge. The quarterback challenge itself wasn't bad. I thought that was pretty cool
because it was a throwback to the quarterback club from the early 90s.
Yeah, the quarterback club in the early 90s was doing that stuff, but they were also throwing see who could throw it the farthest.
Right.
And having that contest with Brett Favre in it, and it wasn't even fucking fair.
Although the best contest was still like throwing the moving targets with the flags on the carts.
Yes, and I liked that. I liked, look, CJ Stroud showed out again. Baker won it. you had Jason Kelsey doing Jason Kelsey things in the sled thing, which did you hear what he said about, because he was on the thing that they were pushing. Did you hear who was on the other one? It was Miles. And he basically said to Travis, he is a gigantic human being.
But with the NBA now out of the All-Star break, it's the Cavs lost back-to-back games coming out of the break. It's nobody's going to catch Boston. We had a great one last night between Minnesota and Milwaukee, which could be a potential finals preview. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens now that the festivities are over. Everyone's had their week-long break. Some of these guys got their little vacation, for the weekend, got to hobnob with some of their celebrity friends or people they normally wouldn't be able to see during the season. And then just being able to start, showing up and showing out for the last 25 or so games.
Yeah, this is going to be a key stretch for the Cavs. We went over their record, their schedule to finish out the year, and this is going to be the hardest part of their schedule coming out of the All-Star break. They have to go 20-11 down the stretch. I'm sorry. There's 31 left. Well, when we talked about it, there's 31 left. So getting there isn't going to be that, I don't think it's going to be that difficult. The Lakers all of a sudden have turned it on. Anthony Davis is playing like a man possessed. D'Angelo Russell played really good last night in their win against San Antonio. Like you said, we may have had a finals preview with Milwaukee and Minnesota. Who would have thought we'd say the words Minnesota and NBA finals ever? Without Kevin Garnett or Kevin Love. But coming down the stretch, I'm just going to open ESPN so I can look at the Cavs schedule.
We got a good one going on right now. Boston 67, New York 64, 9 minutes to go in the third.
Just saw that.
That's the ABC primetime game. So we'll probably, if we get done in time, we'll probably jump over and put that one on for a few minutes.
Probably. Cavs go back up tomorrow night in Washington to play the Wizards. But just going back over the schedule moving forward. To finish out February, tomorrow night against the Wizards, Wednesday night at home, or Tuesday night at home for Dallas, and Wednesday night at home in Chicago for the Bulls.
Definitely winnable games on there.
Agreed. Let me see. February 1, 2, 3. Nope. 4, 5, 6, 7. 6. They're 6-3 so far in February. Or 7-3 in February.
And then the next two are definitely winnable.
Yeah. Next two are winnable, but then they, like we said, March is going to be their bugaboo. It's going to be the toughest part of their schedule. Boston already played the toughest part of their schedule. So, like you said, nobody's catching Boston. We got to get the 2 seed coming out of the Eastern Conference. So we're playing one of the play-in teams in the playoffs. Let's talk about the All-Star game in general in the NBA. And Adam Silver's pissed. He is heated. And he's got every right to be.
You go out and throw up, what was it, 389 points or something like that?
I can't fucking even. I saw the final score on Monday, and I looked at it and I went, what the fuck?
Did they play to like 5 overtimes or something?
No, they don't play much defense in the NBA now anyway.
I mean, it's not even entertaining, even with the lack of defense at that point.
No, it's not.
It's a shooting line.
No, and the dunk contest is garbage. Mac McClung he jumped over Shaq. What the fuck are you gonna do? He jumped over fucking Shaq.
Which we all know the most entertaining thing that Shaq does is get into it with Kenny and Chuck.
Yeah.
I mean, the most athletic thing Shaq's done in probably the last 5 years is get shoved into a Christmas tree by Kenny Smith.
Hilarious. By the way, Shaq started his own podcast because he had to be like us. And he had Jason Kelsey on. And basically told Jason Kelsey to retire.
I saw that.
It's a good interview. his buddy that he does the show with is actually a Philly fan. So Jason being on there was something he wanted to do. Which All-Star game would you eliminate totally? Because the NHL is just the skills competition now. The Pro Bowl is is flag fucking football and dodgeball, basically. The NBA All-Star game is let's see who can score the most points by not doing anything, and then baseball is a game. I mean, I said this when we talked about him before, and I'm a baseball guy, so it's a little biased for me to say, but the Derby, the celebrity softball game, the Futures game, and the All-Star game are the best All-Star festivities in pro sports.
I'd like to make the case for that sport because you've got hardest shot, fastest skater, accuracy, goalie breakaway. You've now actually changed the format to where it's now a 4-team tournament played over one day. They've kind of condensed it down to basically just 2 days, which instead of like spreading it out all over the place and everything, they've even actually found ways to be able to, if they're in a nice climate, to be able to take some of these skills events and put them outdoors. On like, like roller rinks or something like that. But I would certainly eliminate the NBA All-Star game itself, and you really need to restructure the other events. I mean, the Futures game would stay, but the dunk contest, the 3-point contest, you've got to really overhaul them, and you've got to get rid of the entire game.
I agree. I think that in the Pro Bowl being gotten rid of, it's funny that the two quote unquote least popular sports have the best All-Star games.
Well, I think the NFL Pro Bowl, you didn't want to run the risk of guys getting hurt, going into, off-season workouts and conditioning, because this is supposed to be their vacation. So a lot of these guys, their season's been over because, you figure if a team doesn't make the playoffs, but they send 3 guys to the Pro Bowl, those guys basically have not done really any distinct football-related activity in nearly a month.
Yeah.
And then they actually got to, even if it's like a much more abbreviated, but it's still a full contact game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why I like how they've kind of gone to the Pro Bowl games, but eliminated the Pro Bowl itself. That's why I kind of like the flag football game.
Yeah, but if you remember, was it the beach football game years ago who was the running back towards ACL?
I know about that. It's
Rickman Portis. Mine like a trap.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but so Jim, what do you say we debut one of our new segments today?
Do we want to go fashion or do we want to go fact?
What do you say we start with fashion, hit fact, and then the translator?
Okay. So one of our new segments, and it's not going to be a weekly thing, but it's going to be as things come out. We're calling it the thread counts. No, this is not how quality or Egyptian cotton your sheets might be, but this is our little take on a uniform watch. So we had one from last week that we didn't get a chance to get to, and then something new that we've known about for a little while, but we actually saw them firsthand in the last couple of days. Now that teams have actually reported, one is good, one is god awful. So let's actually start with what's good here, and that would be the Tampa Bay Lightning rolling out probably one of the nicest uniforms I can remember in quite some time.
Yeah, that's pretty hot.
That is gorgeous. And you know me, I am not big Roundo logo guy, as I've got a Winnipeg Jets one up there on the wall. But that is a gorgeous, gorgeous jersey. I don't like the center logo a ton, but everything about that jersey is mwah.
Yeah, no, I like that one too. I like the center logo, by the way. But again, I grew up with the Rangers alternate being the
Lady
badge,
Liberty.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I like that one.
I I think Tampa was still missing something, eliminating black when they went to the all blue a decade ago. Now, granted, they did win 2 cups when that thing. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit here to be able to get a little. It may not let me, but some of the features on this, you can actually see the tie ups on the neck where with as I'll take that down here for just a second, that on this Winnipeg Jets jersey, that a lot of teams may not have the full laces, but they've actually got something where the laces are kind of stitched in, but there's no actual ties to them. This is just flat out old school tie up that a
Yeah.
lot of teams have not done in recent years. The black as the primary with the black helmets. They've got the black pants with the lightning bolt down the side. I love the sleeve combination with the white, the blue, and then the gray. Because the other thing that the Lightning did is they brought back what they called the victory stripes. Now, if you remember on the original Lightning, when players would raise their hands after a goal or when they won the Stanley Cup, there were stripes underneath the arm. So what the Lightning did is they incorporated those stripes and added them in with the socks. So so it goes white, blue, gray, and then on the striping on the sock, it's gray, blue, white.
Okay.
So replicating the victory stripes, but it's taking it through the whole uniform. And then on the inside of the collar, how NHL teams have now started to put um, some sort of team identity. It's got their three three historic Stanley Cups: the 04 Cup in black, the 2011, the 2020 Stanley Cup in gray, and then the 2021 Cup in blue on the inside of the neckline. But very, very well done.
Extremely well done. I'm not a big hockey jersey guy because I'm not a big hockey guy, but I would wear that.
I would. This is the kind of jersey that might have. I've started looking back into Lightning games this week.
Really?
And sure enough, today was the first time that they've won since I actually started watching a couple of Lightning games since they debuted this jersey back on Valentine's Day. And sure enough, actually they beat my Islanders the other night.
That's how it always works, Jim.
Yeah. So we go from the good
to the ugly and bad all at the same fucking time.
We had to know something was going to be bad when Nike started putting their name all over everything.
Fanatics is doing these.
We didn't know it was going to be that bad.
This is god fucking awful. The pants are see-through.
You can see if you look at that close enough, you can see the Nike logo of his compression shorts on his left leg through those. And naturally the hem of the jersey, tucked in.
I'm sure it's mocked up, but there's one with Cincinnati or San Francisco where you see the guy's balls.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Majestic was so good for so long. Why? Just fucking why?
Just seeing these for the on ice product, like all of these are Fanatics based off of the Adidas designs. If it's the replicas, I have no problem. Seeing this makes me a little worried when Fanatics takes over the on ice product in the NHL next year, because the Adidas contract runs out in June.
See, the thing about Fanatics though is that I have Fanatics jerseys, and my Cavs jersey is Fanatics. I love it. I can tell no difference outside of the stitching from the on-court jersey to the Fanatics one I have. I don't understand this.
They're also insanely comfortable with some of that new stretchable technology that they have with their fabric.
Hell yeah. And again, Big Rican is not just a clever name. I'm a big dude. I'm actually quite happy because the Larry Nance jersey fits really well now. I'm easily entertained. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, it's getting to the beyond stupid now. I am getting so sick of these leagues thinking they can make everything better by giving Nike some kind of power over shit they do.
I mean, this is now 3 of the 4 major sports that they've got their hooks into and have essentially ruined. Well, we have to see what the on ice product looks like for the NHL next year with the quality. But with baseball, you've got see-through pants, and there's so much feedback. There's so much feedback and blowback from the Players Association that they're hopeful that they can redesign it at the very least the pants before opening day. And then if Fanatics actually wants to do something different with the jersey as they progress through the season, so be it. But they've got to do something about those pants.
They do. And the big issue with the jerseys, if you can get one where it's the back of it, is the numbers and the names are very small.
Yes.
Ron Darling made a good point today. You grow up and you want your name big on the back of your jersey, your number big on the back of your jersey, and it's just not like that right now with the way Fanatics and Nike have done this. And it's borderline sad. It just pisses me off.
Everything I'm seeing is the front. I'm not finding a decent mock-up on the back. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen them on like, sports logos and like sporting news. I've definitely seen the write-ups.
Yeah, so no one likes the way the numbers and the names are. But I will say this. It is only spring training.
I got one.
Yeah.
I mean, you could definitely tell how much smaller the writing is on that.
That's god awful.
It looks like a t-shirt.
It looks like, you know what it looks like? It looks like you had it ordered from Fanatics and had it made.
Yeah. Screen printed instead of stitched.
See, but that I don't mind, because if you remember back when we were kids, no one had jerseys that had buttons.
Everything was pullover. Yeah.
Exactly. And by the way, the one thing I do like with this year's uniforms, the Mets home BP hat has the racing stripe on it like the 80s uniforms.
Yeah, I know a few of them have those racing stripes. I know the Guardians actually has one on there, but
that's because when they were the Indians in the 80s, they had the racing stripe on the uniform.
Yeah.
So no, I listen, I can't even. It disgusts me. It absolutely disgusts me what they've done to this.
The only thing that we could probably be hopeful here with these is that they didn't have enough time to test how they were going to look and operate on the field because of, the late development and everything. And then they can almost kind of write these off as spring training uniforms and have everything.
They're going to have to. I don't see a way around it. How quickly did Fanatics have to produce these? Let's start there.
Yeah. Because you have to figure, if they're also producing these, are they also producing the minor league ones as well?
Well, here's the other thing too. A lot of teams stopped using you had to produce more sets of regular uniforms this year. Because like the Mets are using in-season uniforms in spring training. The Dodgers always do. There are every team, but I think the Yankees, and I want to say the Angels, are using regular season jerseys for spring training. Like the Mets were in their alternate blues today.
Here's the other thing we have to actually remember is that if they don't get this fixed, not only are these terrible, we still have City Connect jerseys for both the Gardos and the Mets coming out. So you take a jersey concept that's going to absolutely shit the bed and make it worse with the on-field design that's being reviled.
You had to remind me that the Mets are getting a City Connect jersey, didn't you?
The Dodgers hated theirs so much they're doing a second one.
Yeah, I know that. Just, the Dodgers are the fucking Dodgers. The Mets aren't going to get that choice.
I did watch the thing that you had sent me about registering for the season.
I love him. He's great. He is wonderful. I got to say that. For those of you not knowing what we're talking about, Benchwarmer Brand, it's a content creator online. He's the one that does like the quarterback rooms, and now he's broken to Major League Baseball, and it's actually really funny. What was the last one after the Super Bowl? They said we got to let somebody else back in here, and it was Joe Burrow.
Yep.
So speaking of quarterbacks, James,
I just hate the fact that the daddy hat's gone. Now that he's officially been out of the league more than a full year.
The daddy hat. So speaking of him, let's get to our last bit before the translator. This is a loaded question. Because as I had mentioned previously to you privately, I think I said it last week on the show, and I've said it on social media recently. They have the same number of championships that don't include league suspension or fine. Brady, for whatever reason, and here's what gets me about this, and the whole thing about the GOAT debates that ESPN and all these guys do, you know me, it's not the debate because that's objective. Or it's not objective. It's what your preference is. Exactly.
Yeah.
Guys who grew up with a Gatorade jingle in their damn heads are going to be Michael Jordan people. Kids who started watching basketball in the early 2000s are LeBron guys or Kobe people. And that's cool. But the context of the argument is my issue. You don't bring up all pieces of the argument. Like people are asking, oh, who's the greatest of all time? Well, it's Brady. 7 championships. 4 of them come with suspension and fine for cheating. If we're going to bash the Houston Astros, and we fucking should, why are we not doing the same thing to the Patriots? And then Bruschi, did you see what Teddy Bruschi said the week of the Super Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
Bruschi basically came out and said Brady was why we won the first 3 anyway. Wow. What do you think? And I'm not asking the GOAT question. I'm asking, let's talk about the debate question first, and the debate question part of this first. What do you think about that debate? Are you with me on that because you're the journalist, or do you have overriding on the other side?
Well, truth be told, I might have told this story on air before, but I actually did start to write a book about the Patriots' first championship against the Rams, the Spygate, where it was tainted, but I wasn't necessarily saying that it was fixed, but I was actually taking it from the perspective of if this game was fixed, here's why you could think that it was fixed. It was, in hindsight, there was some fact, but on the other side of the coin, if you're a realist that didn't think that there wasn't foul play, you're thinking, this guy's actually got his tinfoil hat on and is probably now a QAnon, conspirator. But if you're a realist, yeah, you got to look at some of the, there's more than just a little bit of coincidence here. Game was right after 9/11. They changed the logo after 9/11 of the game. They came out as a team. It was a Boston Pops Orchestra. It was 2 weeks after after the tuck rule, which they changed the rule the following year instead of like the following week.
Mm-hmm.
It should have. It was there was so much, suspect evidence out there. Call it circumstantial, but eventually some of that stuff adds up. You never really had that with Patrick Mahomes, because with the Mahomes argument is that, well, Joe Burrow wasn't ready for, prime time, or Josh Allen went Josh Allen, and Josh Allen's never going to get over the hump and win the big one. Well, they still got to go out and they got to win the big one at the neutral site 2 weeks after that. And he's done it 3 times, 2 of them coming from behind late.
All 3 of them. All 3 of his wins, he was down 10 points.
He was down 10 points, but it's like he had to, but the first one against Philly, they had to come back in the fourth. When they came back against Philly last year, they were trailing in the fourth quarter. In 2 weeks ago when they won it, they were down in the fourth quarter and had to actually go to overtime.
Yeah, I mean, he's the reason that they've won those games.
Don't you dare go Hoobastank on me.
I'm not going Hoobastank.
You big dummy.
No, so my issue with this is the context of the argument. Put all the facts out there, because those are facts. Those aren't, you can make all the jokes you want. Yeah, he may have won 7. He's got 4 with suspension. He's got the stupidest play call in the history of the NFL, and he's got the biggest choke job in the history of the NFL. He's won 2 legit Super Bowls. The one against your Rams, the second one, when the Rams didn't show the fuck up, and when they beat the piss out of Kansas City.
Yeah.
But again, let's talk context. Kansas City lost 3/4 of its offensive line that week. The Rams had Jared Goff,
who actually, and remember, they also benefited from the New Orleans no call in the conference championship.
New Orleans would have beat their ass. That was a horrendous call.
As a Rams fan, I even remember saying, I didn't make excuses. I said, we got over, but as for all the calls that went against us, it's good that it went against somebody else for a change. I owned it.
No, I know you owned it, and I know you would, but phone fell. That's not how you want to get to a Super Bowl with something so egregious like that. That was terrible. Alvin Kamara got mugged.
He absolutely did.
The ball got there.
He absolutely did. But, they both can make the argument, 3 and 5 years.
Yeah.
You got to Brady didn't have nearly the level of talent around him.
Not offensively. Brady went into his first 3 Super Bowls with a top 3 defense.
Right.
So you say what you want about what he had offensively. Agreed, because the first offensively minded Patriots team that went to a Super Bowl got beat.
1986, yep. And then also 1997.
I'm talking about with Brady.
Yeah. Okay.
That team that was undefeated till the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
That was offensive minded. Their defense was old. It was carried. And yeah. But yes, the Tony Easton Patriots were definitely not an defensive team. Neither was the Drew Bledsoe Patriots that lost Super Bowls to Chicago and Green Bay, respectively. I have never thought Tom Brady was the GOAT. I have always thought it's Joe Montana.
I was thinking along those same lines for a lot of years.
And the reason I still say it's Joe Montana is part of the Michael Jordan argument. He's never lost.
Yeah, Jordan 6-0. LeBron is 4-6.
Yeah. So if you're gonna in one sport hold a guy hostage to, playing against better competition in the finals and losing to two teams that between them have 9 championships and 10 Hall of Famers on them, you need to hold Brady accountable for the Super Bowls he lost. 3 of them. He's 7-3. Montana's 4-0 in a time when the league was, in my opinion, more evenly called. So, I mean, it's going to bug me till no end for this one, but I disagree. I don't think Tom Brady's the greatest of all time. I think Patrick Mahomes will end up being the greatest of all time just for the way he does his business.
I think if they repeat next year and become the first ever to three-peat, I think he might even supplant Brady at that point, because even though he's not going to have all of his records, he's going to have the greatest stretch any quarterback in the history of the game, including the greatest of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Kelly got to 4 in a row.
He didn't win.
Didn't win them, even though he got very close with 2 of them. Brady didn't get to 4. He didn't get to 4 in a row. He got to 3 in a row. He won 3 in 5 years. For Mahomes to get at that point, if they got there and won it, it's 3 in a row that they won. It's 4 in a row that they've been to, and it's 5 out of 6 overall.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So we'll come back to this because I mentioned to John that this was going to be discussed when I talked to him today. He definitely wants to weigh in, so we'll come back to this. But Jim, I believe it to be time for band practice.
Would you shut up and just push the button already?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
It's the YZ Translator on the Wise Guys Sports Show.
I'm forever unclean.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the YZ Translator, and the President of the United States can only mean one thing. We are coming to the end of the show, and we are getting to our favorite segment. So for those joining us for the first time, the YZ Translator is when Jim and I give each other 1 to 2 people in or out of the sports world, and the first thing that pops to our mind after the dulcet tones of the late 90s cable modem take us into our pick of the day. As per usual, some of our favorites is the likening of Brett Favre to Boss Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard. Kyrie Irving being a douche canoe. And of course, in honor of our friend whose team may royally fuck themselves with the first pick or lack thereof, Alex calling Dwayne Johnson a shitty actor 2 weeks ago.
Which I need to cut last week's show. That'll give me something to do tomorrow.
Nice. So, James, if you would please reveal the header for the YZ Translator this evening, sir.
Now, there is a backstory to this before I throw this up. 2 days ago, Mike texted me. 3 days ago, he texted me, "Are you going to be around tomorrow morning?" Because Mike and I, so at least once a week, he will call me as I'm driving into work. Some days I might not pick up because I might be in the shower. I might be running behind. Mike texts me, "Are you going to be around tomorrow morning?" I said, "I should be." Mike says, "Well, I'll give you a yell." I say, "Is it going to be a rebel one?"
How did I respond? I said, as long as it's more.
So in honor of that,
Billy Idol gets it. I don't know why she doesn't. Her name's going to be Julia Gulia. Oh, here we go. Now we've added the
shut
one
up, Barrymore.
You shut your face, Barrymore. All right, so now we've added the wedding singer.
I told you it was going to be better than the one I originally had planned, or what you told me.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what I told you. So the other thing I said to Jim was I asked him, I said, "Hey, can the thing on the YZ Transfer this week be Mike is Marvel Jesus in tribute to Deadpool?" He said no, because it needs to be something where I'm surprised every week, and I appreciate that. But it is my turn to give you a name, James, and I'm going to give you, well, I'm going to give you one that I think is going to come a little bit out of left field. And James, your first name in the YZ translator is Stefan Diggs.
Man, them draft picks and salary cap space are going to be awful nice next year.
Do you want him gone?
I don't want him gone. I think we need him gone to be able to start retooling this offense a little bit. And there's also a lot of talk that Gabe Davis has been linked to the Browns.
What are they sending for him?
You could package up a 2, maybe a 4 somewhere. I mean, you've got some mid-round capital that you can do, but let's also see how everything shapes out with some of the cap cuts. But I think Stefan Diggs is going to be a cap casualty.
I think Stefan Diggs is going to be a Dallas Cowboy.
I'm hearing him linked to some NFC teams. I have not heard Dallas because you're paying CeeDee Lamb the same amount of money at 5 years younger.
Who plays defensive back for that team?
Does it matter?
His brother.
I get that, but
he's made his money. And this is no shot at Josh Allen. His best chance to win a ring next year is to go to Dallas. Because how do you cover the Dallas Cowboys with Stefan Diggs and CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah, but how effective are the Dallas Cowboys going to be when the guy who's going to be there is just holding the seat warm for a guy who's going to be in the booth for a year, potentially?
Winning cures a lot. Who you got for me, bud?
Michael, I'm hoping you saw some highlights last night.
Oh, shit.
Your first name in the YZ translator, and he had himself a little bit of a dust-up. It's not Froggy Fresh, but I'm talking about that man, Jimmy Butler.
With the long hair, he's Ghetto Severus Snape is what he is. But other than that, he's Miami Hood Rat. I mean, honestly, why? Why? Didn't Kevin Love start that fight?
Originally, I don't want to say he started it, but it started escalating from there. Yeah, he grabbed him. That's just a guy trying to grab. It wasn't malicious. They went over and they shook hands, and Kev said my bad and everything. But yeah, it wasn't going to affect the final outcome of the game. The game was well in doubt. If it's 5 seconds left, just let the guy, and the guy's scoring. You want to block the shot, fine. You want to let the guy score, fine. You don't actually throw a dust up with 3 seconds to go in a 9-point game.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you. But yeah, he has some moments for me.
I mean, it's already starting to. You're already starting to think who's getting suspended. Could he actually be getting a game or two?
Oh, he is. He is. Whoever escalated it is, and Jimmy was one of the ones that escalated it. I think I got a good one for you for number 2.
I don't think Kevin is going to get suspended for this. No. I think he might get a very, very minimal fine at worst, but I think definitely Najee Marshall is going to get suspended. I think Butler's going to get suspended. I want to say Thomas Bryant and Jose Alvarado are definitely going to get broken off for at least 3 or 4 games. I still also think there's a possibility Zion may get popped for a game or 2. which actually would be a first for him, actually getting suspended for something that happened on the court as opposed to eating his way off of it.
That's true. The James Harden diet, if you would.
It could be, okay, what's better, the James Harden diet or Chuckster with them churros?
Chuckster. Yeah. So, James, I mentioned him earlier. The national treasure that is the second name in the Wisey translator for you, sir, Marshawn Lynch.
I can't even use his own name in his own question.
Here, I got an answer for you.
I was going to say, you're asking the guy who's basically sleep deprived to actually think and do maths right now.
Here's
And
one for you.
And,
Excuse me.
and that's my answer.
Excuse me. Are you a 49er fan? Yeah. Fuck you. For those who don't know, Marshawn went around one of the casinos in Vegas last week, and he found 49ers fans and he said, "Are you a 49er fan?" They said yes. He'd say, "Fuck you," and he'd keep walking.
You know what? Actually, if I could think of his name, I would like to be able to change my answer to that Jets player who went around Brown Stadium just pointing at the fans, going "fuck you" playfully when they were getting blown out by the Browns.
Oh, he was great. Was that Quentin Williams?
It might have been.
He was funny, and the Browns fans, of course, who are so hammered by that point in time anyway, were loving it.
Half of them were getting pissed off. The other half would be like, and half of them were pissed when they saw it. The other half were too drunk to their mothers were too drunk to be astronauts. And then the rest of them were basically just, waving at him that they were going home and we had just clinched a playoff spot.
Yes, they were.
No, not you. Not you. You. Fuck you.
Who you got for me to close it out there, Jim?
Mike, he was not mentioned, but his teammate was very, very recently. Your second name in the YZ translator, Richard Sherman.
And the Patrick Mahomes Senior Award for Stupidest Decision of the Week goes to Richard Sherman. Oh, fuck. How much money you got? You can't get a car. It's fucking Uber, bro. Seriously. And for me to take a shot at Pat Senior, who's got a National League championship ring with the Mets, is saying something. So, Jimmy, as we wrap this up, buddy, what's new with the Sports Note?
We had one very late last week where the Minnesota Wild, in probably the craziest game of the season, back on President's Day on Monday, how we get a whole bunch of matinee hockey. We had the Sabres playing at noon. We had the Blues playing at 1. I had the Jets playing at 4. The craziest game that we saw, we had the NHL's best, the Vancouver Canucks, against the Minnesota Wild. The game ended 10-7. In a game that Vancouver at one point led 5-2, and then Minnesota scored 6 goals in the span of 5.5 minutes.
Jesus.
And then Vancouver cut it to 1 with 2 minutes to go, and then Minnesota still put 2 empty netters in. So the Vikings beat the BC Lions.
Could the Vikings actually beat the BC Lions, though?
It depends. If they're playing on the 50-yard, if they're playing on the 110-yard field with 3 downs, no.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, the first episode of the Big Recon Reboot is up. The now once monthly mostly about the Mets, but I will touch the team favorite teams. I will not be going into the widespread stuff we do on here anymore. Any previews of anything will be done through the Wise Guys, as it is the quote unquote news show of the two. But yeah, first one today is in the can. About 24 minutes. Not much. It's mostly me railing on about what the Mets didn't do last year and didn't do in the offseason. End of March will be the full 2024 New York Mets preview. And then I will get into some Cavaliers topics as the year and the playoffs go on. But yeah, we're back swinging. Now Big Rican will be once a month, and the Wise Guys will be every Saturday or Friday, depending on what we got going on, who's out of town, whatever the hell.
Right.
So, James, we actually went on earlier.
And then still finished typically we're not finishing until close to midnight lately. So we're still coming in an hour before then, but still.
Yeah, right. So for my co-host with the most, JC Blue Note, we will see you next Saturday night here, March the 2nd. Holy shit, it's fucking March.
Back at our regular time of 9 p.m. because this 8 shit just ain't gonna cut it.
No. And everybody will be home next weekend. So hopefully we will have the Sporting Sith on next week. We're going to work on getting Tones from the Bucketeers podcast on. And I'm going to reach out to Eddie this week and find out when he is available, so our month of guests can start off on a hot note. And hopefully the Sporting Sith will be with us next week. Who, by the way, did he tell you he got a sponsorship?
No.
He got a sponsorship.
The last I talked to him was when he told me he was sick earlier this week.
It's a gamer energy drink.
Nice.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to place an order. We get a certain percentage off if we use Sporting Sith on there. Steph and I get into Sneak, which is one of them. This is Dubby.
Okay, because some of those I've actually got to be very careful about because some of them they make like a decaf version of. But I mean, I've actually looked into some of those because some of my favorite, Twitch and YouTube gaming streamers market a lot of that stuff.
They also have the water treatment ones.
Yeah,
that's the wrong word, but it's no caffeine. It's like a hydration thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll send you the link when we get done, and they got the shakers and stuff. So maybe we can have some merch one of these times and maybe get a kickback.
Speaking of merch, possibly this summer we might have something new. No, I'm actually.
There's lots of things changing with the Wise Guys.
Not showing my letter from the IRS about changing my password, but there's something on the back of this that could be debuting on this show in the next month or so.
Well, we got to get Steph to sign off on it too, since she's like the graphic designer of the bunch.
Yeah.
She doesn't know it yet.
She could have a mock-up as early as tomorrow.
Give her till Monday. She got to drive home tomorrow.
I'm not saying she has to do anything with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she already asked me tonight, hey, can you go in late on Monday so you can take Bobby to school? Okay, here we go.
I was going to say, who's going to sleep in later, her on Monday or me tomorrow? Because I'm going on 2 hours right now.
Beast mode.
Every time I hear beast mode, you've probably seen it. Remember the original CKY?
Oh my God.
Remember the He-Man song with Brandon Skeletor? You know where I'm going with that?
Can we just end the show because you can't? We're semi-family. See you next week, everybody.
Good night, everybody.